Welcome to a sister story of the Adrian Dominican Sisters. Many of you have enjoyed viewing the sister stories of our women. Today, we have another story to share. However, it's going to be in a different format. Our story today is of Sister Teresa Disch, and her story will be narrated by her dear Adrian Dominican friend, Marilyn Barnett. The narration is going to be supported with special pictures that were chosen from Teresa's many pictures. This will accompany the narration. So greetings, Marilyn. What a great gift. This is very exciting, and it's a great gift that you're giving to Teresa and to the rest of us and those in the viewing audience, that there's always a way we can get your story told. So would you share with us why this format is being used with Teresa's life?
Thank you, Peg. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this. We're using this format to present the life story of one of our sisters who can no longer tell her story by herself. And I'm doing this also so that her life as one of our loved and highly respected sisters will not be lost. And finally, I'm doing it because I hope that others who are able to tell the stories of their dear friends might consider this an option. And so we begin. Life story of Teresa Disch. Teresa was born in Beloit, Wisconsin on March the 17th, 1938. This Casper Henry Disch and Josephine Finnegan Disch, fondly known as Cap and Joe by their friends and everyone who loved them. Cap was a pattern maker and Joe was a homemaker. And here's Teresa celebrating her very first birthday. She was the firstborn. During her first year, her father was transferred to Rockford, Illinois, where they were blessed with 3 more children: Richard, Rita, and Bob. All of them live today still in Rockford, with the exception of only a niece and a nephew. So Mrs. Disch, Joe, was extremely happy to have so many grandchildren and great-grandchildren around. Teresa had a very good relationship with her family and with her parents because she experienced love, trust, and encouragement to be the best she could be and to assume the responsibilities both within the family and beyond the family. They were close. They had wonderful memories of trips to the Chicago museums, the Brookfield Zoo, Marshall Fields at Christmas time, and the historical sites in Illinois and Wisconsin, and annual vacations at Lake Ripley in Cambridge, Wisconsin. Her family belonged to St. Peter's Parish, and she and her brother and sister all attended the parish school there, which was taught by the Loretto sisters. Upon her graduation from St. Peter's, she went to Bishop Muldoon High School, where our sisters taught. And Muldoon, as many of you will know, is an all-girls school and offered many opportunities for leadership development, which significantly affected Teresa's life as an adult and in her following ministries. It was also during grade school and high school that she had a serious interest in religious life. However, upon graduating from Muldoon, her father asked her to wait for a couple of years before entering religious life. And so she attended Marquette for 2 years in a liberal arts curriculum and made her decision to enter in 1959 with the blessings of her parents. Now, on this picture, you see Teresa on her entrance day, February 2nd, 1959. And because she had attended Marquette, she was sent almost immediately back to Chicago, where she began to teach at St. Mary Mount Carmel School. And she taught there from February to June of 1959. She completed her postulancy and novitiate and taught grade school while finishing her degree in Latin from Siena Heights College University. The bottom picture is Teresa as a novice, and then Teresa at final profession. In the summer of '64, she began her graduate studies in Latin at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. She loved this time because it was an opportunity for her to meet the Adrian Dominican Sisters from all over the country and to be closely affiliated with religious women and men throughout the country also. It was an exciting time too because of the release of the Vatican II Council documents, and they were being published and discussed all over, everywhere, where there were sisters and any religious. It was very hopeful and enriching time. She made her final profession in 1965, which was the conclusion of the Vatican Council, and when many Adrians entered into the full renewal process, as did many of the other U.S. congregations of religious. Teresa thought that the general chapter of 68 to 70, our general chapter, the Adrian Dominicans general chapter, was probably the most significant experience in the history of the congregation. It was because there were new visionary leadership, timely documents, and it brought a change from a matriarchal model into a collegial form of women in Dominican religious life. In that picture, you see Dominic, 800 years ago, at the first chapter he conducted with the brothers. The motto of the Dominican order: to praise, to bless, to preach. Copy of the 16 documents of the Vatican Council, which significantly affected all religious women's lives. And also a picture of Rosemary Ferguson, elected prioress at the 68 chapter, and who led the congregation for many years in the renewal. She was happy that there were opportunities for new ministries because she felt that after 14 years of teaching, she really wasn't called to teaching young people. She was most grateful that the congregation supported her desire to study, and so she asked to do that. And so from 60 to 76, she taught in both grade school and high school in the Midwest. She spent some summers at Catholic University, final profession in 65, the general chapter of the Adrian Dominicans in 68, and she received an MA and an MDiv in theology from St. John's University in Collegeville and the Jesuit School of Theology in 1976. In 1976, Sister Rosemary Ferguson called Teresa and asked her if she would become the director of formation for the congregation. She served in that position from 1976 until 1982. On the right is a picture of the crowd that entered on Labor Day weekend in 1976. Some of them are with us today. Some of them chose another way of life, but you see the people, Teresa there in the back with that group of young women. And she found working with them in these 7 years and walking with them to grow into dedicated Dominicans, living their lives in the spirit of Dominic and encouraging them to adapt to the needs of the world in so many ways was such a great blessing for her. Here she is again with other novices. And on the right-hand side with Rosemary, Sarah Shaki, and other women in formation. And the final picture, which was sent to me by Marianne Fallman, of Teresa at the end of her term. It's Marianne Fallman and Kathy Drolet. Marianne is still with us as a professor at Wayne State. Teresa, yes, and Kathy Drolet chose another way to walk. After formation, Teresa began a new ministry in rural southern Colorado, working among cattle, sheep, and wheat Hispanic farmers living in the San Luis Valley. The position called for 2 sisters to do lay leadership formation with people from 5 communities who are all part of one church, St. Joseph's Church, which you see down there on the right. And that's a picture of the cemetery next to the church. You can see it's pretty barren land there. We were working under a 3-year grant from the Extension Society because the parish was unable to pay the salaries of 2 sisters. The position asked for 2 sisters to do this leadership formation, and the goal was to form leaders who, among the laymen and women, would carry on where no sister would be able to minister there. At that time, I had just graduated from Notre Dame with a graduate degree in theology, and Teresa and I began this journey to St. Joseph's Parish in Capuline together. And it was a wonderful ministry. Me coming from the East Coast, Teresa from the Midwest, and living among people from a very different culture and in a completely new environment. It was both exciting and it was very challenging. We reported every 6 weeks to the bishop of the diocese, Bishop Arthur Tafoya. The diocese was quite a large diocese. It extended from Kansas to Utah to the New Mexico borders. But the meetings every 6 weeks with Bishop Tafoya were very helpful because there we sought his advice and counsel as to how to work in this very different situation. And because he was himself a Hispanic, he was extremely kind and patient with us. We were able to identify 4 areas of need that the people spoke of, and we worked together to identify the leaders, have them commissioned by the bishop, and then finally select leaders to be able to carry on when we had to move on. At this time, too, Teresa was also going back and forth to Adrian because she was working with the group that was writing the new Constitution. And she found this a really wonderful time to explore the purpose and meaning of religious life as it was presented in the vision of the Vatican Council. We moved up to Pueblo and stayed there for 3 years. And at the end of those 3 years, the grant was no longer available. And so we traveled back east. Teresa, because of her formation experience and working with the people in the Southwest, received permission to study social work at Wayne State University, and she received her master's in 1990. From 90 to 2007, Teresa had many positions based on her experiences and education. She worked for 1 year in hospice and then moved to be the Associate Director of Formation of Deacons in Chicago, Illinois for several years. Then she joined Sister Jean Keeley's Catholic Counseling Associates practice, where she did counseling, spiritual direction, retreat work, and days of prayer and reflection. During this time, she lived with Sister Maggie Menard, and in this position, she worked with a variety of women and men, both lay and religious, which she found very meaningful because it was an awesome responsibility, she said, to accompany them as they developed their relationship with God, themselves, and others. There's a picture of Teresa in different ministries and with different people during these years. During this time, her mother was still alive, and so she used to go from Chicago to Rockford every 3 weeks to care for her. On the left, you see a picture of Joe and Teresa, and then Joe below. And then the right-hand side is when Joe celebrated her 100th birthday. It was a most wonderful celebration with her sons, daughters, their families, and friends like myself who were able to attend. It's not a complete picture of the whole family, but it gives you some idea of the size. Teresa was invited by the Dominican Center for Spirituality to return to the Detroit area to teach people studying spiritual direction. She came and lived in Adrian and traveled both to DeWitt and to Detroit bi-weekly. In DeWitt, she taught the people who were interested in learning how to do spiritual direction. And in Detroit, she did spiritual direction herself, attended staff meetings, and did retreat work. It was also during this time that Dr. Kelly, our prioress, asked she and I to move to the Sienna House, or the Formation House, to live. And we stayed there for 3 years, living among women, young women, exploring religious life, and also with sisters who were still in formation prior to taking their final vows. It was a wonderful experience to see the enthusiasm of these young people looking to dedicate their life to God in some ways. This is a picture of our travels with my sister and her husband, Peg and Dave Mulligan, who were kind enough to invite Teresa and I to travel with them from time to time to Europe. And it was an opportunity that we didn't have prior to this. We were able to see European culture and also to spend time with family ourselves. In 2017, Teresa and I were invited to come to Tucson, Arizona to work with our friend Lois Paha in her 4-year diocesan formation program. The program was for men and women seeking to be ordained deacons and commissioned as lay ecclesial ministers. Lois asked us to come to teach, to do mentoring, to provide spiritual direction, all of which were gifts that we had developed over the last several years. In that picture on the right, you see us at a party, I guess you'd say it was, or at least an assembly of people being asked to donate to the Catholic school system of Pueblo. On the right, you see Teresa, in the back, Lois, myself, and then you see Ophelia and Barry James. Ophelia was a secretary to Lois, a woman who grew up in Tucson and who was an invaluable help both to Lois and to us in understanding the culture in Tucson. And below you see what Tucson looks like when it's flowering. We moved to Tucson, and after several months, Teresa began and hoped she would be able to negotiate the climate as well as the assistance she needed to live and minister there without too much difficulty. But as I said, after several months, she found this was not the case. And she returned to Adrian to live at Maria, where she is presently residing. You can see in the lower right-hand picture, because Teresa is half Irish, her mother was full Irish, and she was born on St. Patrick's Day. One could not get away without having great celebrations on her birthday. And the story continues. You see on the right-hand picture, celebration of her 60th Jubilee with her sister Rita, her brother Rich, and his wife Mary Ann. And on the right, her brother Bob and his wife Connie. That's at the stable. And then a picture down below of the crowd, a picture of Teresa in the DLC. While she's been at the DLC, in addition to her 60th Jubilee, she has celebrated her 80th, 81st, 82nd, and 83rd birthdays. Teresa has now been living, as I said, for the last 4 years in Maria, and in that time has developed memory loss and serious dementia. Because she is unable to present this interview herself, she has indicated to me that she would like me to come and tell her story. It has been my privilege and honor to be able to do so. Thank you.
Marilyn, I take a deep breath. That was wonderful, wonderful. I think you could have told it without the script. It really was a wonderful tribute to you and also to Teresa and the wonderful life that she is leading and that she continues, even in the present situation, to inspire us. So thank you for the time that it took you to gather all of this. And I know your heart was in it. And I'm sure you're going to be sharing this with Teresa, right?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, be anxious to see and hear her responses. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this, anyway, thank you. I'll have to get this on to our communication office. So
Okay.
I'll be in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.